Senator Fred Hemmings, it's great to have you here.
Well, it's great to be here, Jay.
Thanks for coming down today. It's wonderful to have you in the studio. So, gee whiz, the first thing I heard that you're going to be speaking tomorrow about the on the Asia Pacific Clean Energy Summit, and I'm very interested because I spent a lot of time there this week. So tell me, what's the panel that you're involved in? What are you going to be talking about?
Actually, I'm speaking a little after 9 in the morning, and I'm one of the keynote addresses, I think, following Lieutenant Governor. And I'm going to be talking about a technology that is 100% clean as far as the atmosphere goes, incredibly safe, the best safety record of any energy source in the history of energy, abundant, completely renewable, firm capacity, enough excess capacity and non-peak demand times to energize all the cars on the island, enough to desalinate water.
People are probably wondering what that might be. This is.
Well, should I give you the punchline?
Yeah,
okay.
The punchline. Yeah.
It's nuclear energy, and more specifically, small modular reactors. For a number of political reasons, mostly in Washington, D.C., when I've been back 3 times on this issue to Washington, America's got its head in the sand when it comes to nuclear energy. A number of enlightened nations around the world, including places like Argentina, of course France, with 80% of their energy coming from nuclear generators.
Works well in France.
It works very well in France. And what people don't know about France is they recycle 90% of their waste at Le Havre. And they're doing an excellent job. Russia's doing some breakthrough technology with a mobile modular reactors. And just the opposite in America. We're going online with our first mega reactor, first one in 30 years. And it is criminal what we've done to ourselves because of our lack of vision and lack of leadership on this issue, especially here in Hawaii. There are a number of opportunities here. You know what the problem is. Hawaii's got the most expensive electricity in the nation at the state level. We're the most dependent. We've literally, under the leadership of some people at the legislature who allegedly are supposed to be environmentalists, we've gone backwards. We're producing more carbon emissions than any other state when it comes to our energy. And it's our own fault. We have these opportunities. We haven't seized them. I'm a big proponent of solar and wind, but they're not firm capacity. What I'm advocating, small modular reactors, is firm capacity. It's a new technology. It's small, can be anywhere from 25 megawatts to 250, 300 megawatts.
That much.
They can be sequestered underground where they're safe. So it really is an unprecedented opportunity. There's a codicil in the Constitution that people don't understand. And some people think we can't have nuclear energy in Hawaii because the Constitution won't permit it.
It doesn't say that.
No, it doesn't say that. It says 2/3 approval of the Senate and the House, which is a majority, supermajority. But the real ludicrous aspect of the whole thing, Jay, is that we already have the highest concentration of small modular reactors of any place in the world.
With the Navy.
Nuclear submarines. We've already got it here, so why not use the technology for the betterment of Hawaii? A couple of things. I have a vision of the future, and I hope that before I lay my head down on the pillow to go to sleep for the last time in my life, that I'll see the day when we have an abundant electricity, where we'll have no more internal combustion engine cars. Where America can assume leadership in the world car industry again by developing electric cars and having enough electricity to energize them affordably and cleanly. Where we can, for instance, put a small modular reactor on the island of Kahalapi and turn it into a Garden of Eden, because we'd have enough to desalinate water, pump it to the top of the island, and irrigate the entire island. Opportunities abound, but it's going to take some enlightened leadership, and it's going to take overcoming the just say no syndrome that I see so often in Hawaii. That it really is sad, Jay.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, when good people have good ideas and want to innovate and make good things happen, that a handful of rebels get together and oppose it, and it doesn't happen. Let me give you 3 examples. Back in the 80s, I was in the House of Representatives, and I suggested to the then Governor Waihee that Hawaii would be the perfect place for a space launch industry. As you well know, we're located in the Pacific. We would have a better and more efficient launch equatorially. We'd get more lift from our rockets than Cape Canaveral, plus we'd have less weather delays. But we're also in a good position for polar orbits. That industry, you could have gotten off the plane in Hilo, and Hilo could have been the gateway to the stars, looking into deep space with the telescopes of Mauna Kea and launching telecommunications and other satellites. It could have been a multi-billion-dollar industry. Well, lo and behold, and Doc Byers and other leaders, community business leaders, saw the wisdom in it. But a handful of malcontents, and I will call them malcontents, got together and said, oh, this is Pele's Pico or whatever it was, and then a bunch of what I consider, in an area that's highly dependent on government handouts, a bunch of people got together, quasi-environmentalists, they claimed to be, and said this wasn't good for the environment. Long and short is we don't have a space industry. It could have been the second largest industry in Hawaii to tourism by now. Probably the greatest example of the just say no syndrome is Super Ferry. And we all know what happened there. It's absolutely ridiculous that Hawaii does not have an inter-island ferry system that could be, because once again, a handful of people in Kauai and a couple others on Maui protested, so the whole state yielded to it. Just
The oppression of the minority.
yeah, and I minorities are very important because they trust me, I know the role of minorities, and
Sure you do.
but ultimately we have to make decisions based on what is good for the most for the longest term and within the confines of what's being fair and legal, and we haven't. Our state is doing the same thing and continuing to expect different results, and we have a one industry economy. I'm scared, Jay. I'm scared about the future. I'm scared for my children and my grandchildren. Tourism's our number one industry, and God bless it, but if we have another fuel crisis where airfares have to go to twice as much as they are, which could happen, or we have some terrorist event or something that brings tourism to its knees, we're in serious trouble, as we were before. And our second biggest industry is Senator Dan Inouye. When you look at it, his bringing of federal spending here, and God bless Dan Inouye, we'd be lost without him, to Hawaii.
We'll be lost without him, is what'll happen.
That's exactly what will happen. And we have done nothing to anticipate nor fill the void. He is a wonderful, vibrant man, but none of us are immortal. And there will be a day when he's not there to help us. And what have we done to help ourselves? So we have some big challenges in front of us, Jay, and we have to be smart and intelligent. And I'm not a Republican in a Democrat state because I chose the fast track to political success. I have a very passionate
I know you
feelings
do.
about this, and I'm getting out of politics, but I'm not abandoning my desire to see some good things happen. The change, the easiest thing in the world, especially for a political person, is to sustain the status quo. But if you look at the great epic changes of history, they've been just that. The people that have been bold enough to step forward and change the status quo, our founding fathers, they could have said, okay, we'll go along to get along, and we'll live with King George, and would still be a
Could have said that.
Yeah, they could have easily said that. Would have probably saved a lot of their lives and things. In every field of endeavor, the people that said this isn't good, this isn't right, let's make it better. The people that brought about change are the people that have made a better planet, and a better Earth, and a better society for all of us.
So here you are, your term will be up in a few months, 3 or 4 months, I guess, the end of the year.
November 3rd.
Hmm?
I'll wake up November 3rd.
November 3rd, is that fast?
Yeah, what's the election?
Okay, the election is the end of your
Yes,
term.
I'm not running for re-election, so
yeah, okay.
the good people of my district, the 25th Senatorial District, will elect someone to replace me.
Okay, so the question is, at that moment in time, we're approaching that moment, in the nature of Washington's farewell, forgive me for that. What's your appraisal of the situation? I think you've given us a view of that already, but also, what's your advice to Hawaii at this point in time after a really, really good career, a Republican career, if you will, but a good career in the legislature?
Well, I'm very proud of my career. Before I make my plea to the people, some people will say that Republicans can't get much done because we're the minority. That's not the problem in Hawaii. The problem is not what Republicans aren't doing. It's what the majority party, the Democrats, are doing. And what they're doing is just sustaining the status quo, as we already talked about. Having said that, looking to the future, I want the people of Hawaii to start voting not only with their hearts, but also with their minds. And we make decision makings based on how we feel with our hearts emotionally. And then what we know for facts and what the reality is. And Thomas Jefferson, when he was ambassador to France, wrote back to James Madison a letter advocating in 1787, after the ratification of the United States Constitution, the Bill of Rights. And he had, all the rights that we know in the first 10 amendments. But he wanted one more right that never made it for a number of legal reasons, which you find interesting. And that was the avoidance of monopolies. And we all know how bad monopolies are, especially for consumers. When you have one group or one company or one business or one union dominating something, it doesn't give you choice and competition. So they can produce the worst product in the world and charge whatever they want because you as a consumer. And the same applies to politics. Now, I'm not saying Democrat or Republican. This is a nonpartisan statement. We need to have a two-party system so we have checks and balances. And that's my major plea. Please, people of Hawaii, don't vote for so-and-so because of the political label. Vote for what's good for the future of this state. I'm very proud of my tenure there. I've made some wonderful friends, and I have a bittersweet feeling about leaving the legislature. But I've learned how to work outside the legislative system because Republican legislation is oftentimes dead on arrival. But Papahanaumokuakea, the Northwest Archipelago, being designated the world's largest marine sanctuary, that's part of my district. It started in my office. I took it to the governor took it to the President of the United States. It happened. It's huge. I worked with the Department of Interior, Dirk Kempthorne, and helping have half the land underneath the stadium, which is federal land, changed from just recreational use to recreational commercial so that we can do something that's economically public-private partnership to develop that resource and build a new stadium. I've been involved in a lot of, with the city and county, believe it or not, a lot of just local district traffic initiatives. You'd be surprised how the little things make people.
Well, actually, I always thought of you as the big thing, so I'm interested in, you have national types of initiatives around you, and that's the language you speak. So I'm interested in the little things too.
Well, it's little things like when Lake Jardine School started, right off the Pale Highway there in Kailo off Quarry Road. In the morning, there was only one left-hand turn lane going back on the Pale Highway, so the traffic would back up and create a tremendous traffic jam. And the road was wide enough, so I simply got the state to make two left-hand turn lanes. They had to, do what they do. They had to repaint the road and do the survey and all the bureaucratic things. But it made a huge difference in people's lives. So it's little things like that people deal with day to day that can make a difference in how they start or end their day. But I'm also very proud of some of the big things. I have become a voice for major legislation initiative for this small modular reactor initiative. I've talked at the National Energy Institute forum in Washington, D.C. I talked at the Small Modular Reactor Forum in Alexandria, Virginia just several months ago. I talked at a American Military Energy Forum in San Diego, and I've become probably one of the leading political advocates for it. And
you'll continue to do this?
I'll continue to do that. I feel very strongly about it. It is really one of the great keys to the future, not only for the environment, not only for energy, not only for electric cars, but also for national security. Right now, we are buying oil from people and nations that are indirectly underwriting a war against us. And I'm really concerned that we got our head in our sand now after 2001. There are people out there that have declared war on us. They're killing us. They've created an untold problem with security at airports, for instance, and the costs related to that. Young men and women have died defending freedom, and we didn't start this war, but we certainly have to work to maintain our national security, and buying fossil fuels from enemies who may put their money into terrorism is not a smart thing.
Mm-hmm. So wasn't there an initiative in Congress that was going to fast track the small modular reactor?
The nuclear energy reactor, in analyzing the larger problem, as usual, and we should really get into this because the other thing I'm working on is the real stumbling blocks of bureaucracy. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission takes 10 years to get a license. And they also, because of federal law, have not allowed for recycling. As I said earlier, France recycles 90% of their waste. Two simple changes, and I rough drafted, which I've submitted to the Nuclear Caucus and some other potential leaders. And if the House changes, we've got some real dynamic leadership that's going to be looking at this legislation that would revamp the licensing process for America and also allow us to recycle waste as they do in France. Let me tell you how frustrating this is. The federated Micronesian states, the small island nations, have just passed legislation to allow small modular reactors to be implemented. They actually had law that banned nuclear energy from the Pacific Island states. They just passed law to allow it.
So now it'll happen.
Yeah, now it will happen. And their governor just signed it, and my good friend Senator Kalani English is very aware of it. We have some very sharp legislators that quite frankly need the public's help. Kalani English, I think he's willing to be bold enough to implement the change. A guy who I've got an incredible amount of respect for is Mark Takai.
Mm-hmm.
He's very progressive on this. Representative Gene Ward, too. There are legislators who have the vision and I would say the courage enough to try to make this happen. And it should. We've already got the nuclear reactors here. Let's use them for the benefit of our people.
Every time I'm in a conversation and the subject comes up, there are people who step forward as environmentalists, right, and say, never, no way. And right or wrong, they're going to oppose anything like that in Hawaii to their last and dying breath.
And when you ask them why, they're stuck for an answer. And what they usually say, when you hold them accountable for their recalcitrant, mindless opposition, is they usually say safety. And then you say, well, specifically what? And it's just a visceral, knee-jerk reaction that's just absolutely pathetic. All these other nations are doing it, including small island nation in the Pacific. And we got a guy saying never, no way. But you got to remember, one of the organizations, I don't want to mention, one of these alleged environmental organizations opposed geothermal on the Big Island 25 years ago. And now we're dependent on fossil fuel, more dependent than we were 25 years ago. So the track record of some of these alleged environmental organizations is just the opposite. They've been bad for the environment. But I'd like to think that some of them are more anti-capitalism than pro-environment. They think that the real devil in the world is capitalism, not
there's a huge
pollution.
Disconnect on that, and I mean now at your departure from office, we should talk about that because I'm sure you think about that. There's huge misunderstanding by the public about what capitalism is and how it is the foundation of our economy and our society.
Yeah, I think about that all the
And
time.
they fight with it, and they don't want it to go away, and they hate the word profit. And you say to myself, how do you think they could actually exist without these things?
Really, we shouldn't use the word capitalism. We should use the word free enterprise, because what we're talking about is the freedom of the marketplace.
That's fine.
And freedom of the marketplace allows you and I to take a risk with our money and to make things happen. Honest profit is the fuel of everything great in the economy. It's what drives the engine. It's what pays the taxes, that takes care of the needy. It's what pays the taxes that allegedly is supposed to educate our children. Honest profit is the fuel of a healthy economy. Now, there are some crooks, but there's crooks in labor unions, there's crooks in government, and there's crooks in business.
And we have to be smart enough to separate the wheat and the chaff.
Exactly right, Jay. Exactly. And so, but it's a mentality. I often, I lay in bed at night and ruminate about these different things, and I'm trying to ask what's really motivating. What I think is motivating some of these alleged progressives, and I use the word quite cautiously, is they don't really want equal opportunity, which is guaranteed in our Constitution, equal protection under the law. What they want to do is create an egalitarian society, because they think it's unjust that some children are smart and some aren't so smart. So we want to create a system where they're all the same. They think it's unfair that some people are wealthy and some are poor. So we want to create a system where everybody's the same. And it's just never going to happen, because we're not. They even go as far as to have something called moral equivalency. I saw a movie, I think it was called The Kingdom, where the punchline at the end of the movie was, well, the terrorists are killing people, but we're killing terrorists, so we're both killers. So there's a moral equivalency. We're all bad. And unfortunately, there's good and evil in the world. There's right and wrong. And that's why we have laws, and that's why we have criminal laws. And people aren't equal. They should have equal protection, and they should have equal rights. But we've got to do what's best for those who play by the rules. And in a free market system where you have freedom of choice, in the free enterprise system, people that take risks and work hard should get rewarded. And their money should not be taken to give it to the person who's chosen to live a slovenly lifestyle.
So Hawaii is in a strange place on these things. And, sometimes you think that, well, even if it's strange, it's better than a lot of places on the mainland. But then you think, well, but it has so much capacity. It has so much promise. Why doesn't it realize the promise? So how do you feel about this?
It's not, and that's the whole thing. How I feel is, it's irrelevant. How
Okay.
you feel is irrelevant.
Okay.
Let's look at the facts.
Okay.
Many of our brightest and youngest people, even though Hawaii's what it is, they're moving to the mainland
Yep.
because there's no opportunity. They can't afford a house. And people are living in 2 or 3 families in a house now. So let's really look at what's really happening here. And let's try to change it so we can have a society where we can reasonably live here and afford to live here. Yeah. And the blessings of Hawaii aren't because of us. They're despite us. The blessings are the sun, the ocean, the environment. And part of it is the culture, that we have such a diverse culture, the people, the goodness of the people. But when you start looking at the pragmatic side, cost of living, the cost of housing, transportation alternatives, all of the things that measure the quality of life, we're not doing too well.
We're shooting ourselves in the foot.
We're no kidding.
So the question is, again, your advice to the next generation, to the guy who takes your seat next time around, to the legislature in general, to the people who wrestle with these issues you're talking about. What's your advice?
My advice to the people of Hawaii, and most especially to don't let decisions be made strictly with emotion. Look at the facts, look at history, and make informed decisions and do things that are going to be substantive in their results. So we can have the change we so desperately need. I was at the legislature, and I noticed earlier you were talking to a member of the Board of Education who's been around a long time. 2004, I was at the legislature, and I voted no against reinventing education. And in the ensuing years, we increased funding by education by $700 million, and nothing's changed. We got the same results. We just, added $700 million to the budget, not quite doubled it, but added considerable amount. Biggest item we make. We didn't change the system, so we're just throwing more money at the problems. And unfortunately, the people of Hawaii said, oh, reinventing education, wrote the slogan, yeah, I'll vote for you. You reinvented education. Here we are, 6 years later, and we got the same results and the same people saying the same thing. I love this governor's election this time. One of the candidates has literally been in office for most of my adult life, and he's come out with a book that says he's going to change things. Well, he's had 40 years to change it. He's going to fix education. He's had 40 years to fix education. He's going to diversify the economy. He's had 40 years to do it. And these 2 guys running for governor and are going to do the same thing and say 4 years from now, well, give me 4 more years so I can change things.
Well, I wanted to mention that to you because it's been on my mind, and it's the question of memory, short memory. We have a system which people make grand conclusions and grand statements at the time they run for office. And as soon as you look again, everybody forgot. They forgot, the public forgot, and we're on to another soundbite, and we lose our initiative that way.
I think it's way more serious than that.
Okay.
There are a great number of people. I ran for governor in 1990 with no money, because I was just like so far an underdog, and people just, you know how that works. I got close to 40% of the vote against a guy that spent $3.5 million, which is a lot of money back then. And so there is a base of people that do see the big picture and do want change. The unfortunate problem, and it's the biggest, it's a $1 trillion problem nationally, is that the biggest special interest group in the nation, the biggest special interest group in Hawaii, the people that get paid more than their private sector counterparts are public workers. And they're the ones that are being told by union leaders, good, wrong, or indifferent, to vote a certain way, to stay. So they elect the people, and they get the cream right off the top of the budget. That's the underlying facts behind the problem. And I would say to the union member, Your kids go to public schools. You're living in a state with deteriorating infrastructure. You're living in a state where your children are not going to get the best education from the public education system. If you're a public union worker, don't blindly vote the way the HSTA, the HGEA, and the UPW and the others tell you to vote. Vote for what's best for you, not for some union lunas keeping their jobs. It's a kind of a perverse plantation. And the numbers are staggering. The Pew Foundation, Jay, out of Washington, D.C., a really respected think tank that is a charitable trust, determined that the 5 states that are technically in bankruptcy, led by California, are because of their cost of their labor costs. There was a article in the Star Advertiser. The article talked about future unfunded liabilities, and they said we have $32 billion on Oahu of unfunded liability. They included optional things.
I remember the story.
Yeah, the rail was one of them. Well, we don't have to have the rail, but we got it. $6 billion we're going to have to pay to finish it.
Well, at least.
The sewer system, that they estimated $2 billion will end up costing $4 billion, as you well know. So they listed some things. $17 billion of unfunded future liability are benefits for public workers, plus the cost of paying them every year. And they make, secretaries in public employment make more than the private sector, way more. So they generally make more, and they're immune from accountability because they got union contracts and civil service. If a private sector guy, and don't get me wrong, you public workers, I believe that 90% of you are good, hard-working people that you earn your every cent you work for. But there's too many that don't. And our system is unaccountable at the bureaucratic level. There's 4 branches of government. Did you hear about this yet? The legislative.
There's one I didn't hear about.
Okay, yeah, there's one. Well, there's the founding fathers. They got the legislative, the judicial, and the executive, of course. Well, the 4th one is the most powerful one because it is immune from accountability from the voters, and it's a bureaucracy. It's the people now employed by government. They are the driving special interest group of the legislature.
It used to be the media, but the media kind of went away already.
Well, thank God for the technological revolution. People are getting information directly as it happens.
It has an effect on things. Yeah.
I think it's probably been one of the most profound. I read a article in a Reason magazine, and it was about. It was an incredibly clever article. It was cleverly titled, too. It was about ideas having sex. And that ideas spawn other ideas. And so, it has a domino effect. And the way things are changing technologically, my son and his generation and the younger kids behind us, they don't read newspapers. They get information before it happens as it happens. And they're looking on the internet. When they wake up every morning, they log on and they go to exactly what they want to see, and they get exactly what's happening. And the technological revolution is probably what's going to save this planet.
I hope so. If
And
it works out right. Yeah.
I hope small modular reactors are part of it. So,
So, you're leaving office, and I'm going to miss you
Well, thank you.
in that office, and I think other people will too. However you've agreed or disagreed, and however others have agreed or disagreed with you, the fact is you've fomented a lot of ideas down there, and you've been passionate about your ideas, and you are not into self-interest, you're into the common good, and I really appreciate that a lot.
that's awfully nice of you, Jay. Thank you.
So the question is, what are you going to do now?
Well, I'm going to do a lot of things. I like to tell people, I don't know if you remember when we were kids, I'm a real surfer. I've never had a real job. So I'm going to continue that.
Still defines you.
After all these years. Or another way to look at it is I've had a lot of jobs. I started out as an entrepreneur, and I created professional surfing. I went into consulting business and did some marketing consulting. I was in the legislature. I've been on the radio. I've done some writing. The next thing I'm starting to do is I'm registered with speakers bureaus, and I have made a habit of studying Hawaiian history to great detail. And I give a pretty good presentation on Hawaii for visiting groups, and tour groups book me, and I'm going to talk to a group next week on Maui. And then I also, for those who are interested, do a pretty good talk on the history of surfing and sports and things like that. Got to leave you with this little story. In my pursuit of acquiring more wisdom about Hawaiian history, years ago, I was paddling in a canoe that I brought from home, now Canoe Club in Kealakekua Bay. And I was paddling across Kealakekua Bay, and I saw the obelisk. And the obelisk is a white obelisk. It's about 25 feet high, and it marks the rocks that Captain Cook was killed on. So I paddled in there,
Kealakekua
yeah,
Bay,
and other people in the canoe, and I jumped out, and I swam in and climbed up the rocks, and I stood on the very, just to say I did it, on the very rock that Captain Cook met his demise on. He breathed his last breath. 2 weeks ago, I was at a legislative leaders conference. I'm on the board of a national organization, and we had a conference in Dublin with our counterparts in Europe. And before I was in Ireland, I went to Edinburgh, Scotland, and took a day and went down to Middlesbrough, England, and that's where Captain Cook was born. And we went to the Captain Cook Museum, and I went out in the field outside the museum. It's in a park on the edge of a forest. Captain Cook was born in basically a shack. He lived in tremendous poverty. He was son of a farmer, and there's a plaque on a fountain there, and this is where Captain Cook was born. So I would like to think that I'm one of the few local boys that has stood on the ground where Captain Cook breathed his last breath and where he drew his first breath.
That's perfect.
So it is perfect.
And you can speak about that in your
Yeah, I can
speeches.
speak about it.
And
yeah.
I hope you come back and talk with us again, you know.
I'd love to, Jay.
You have such great ideas, and we'd like to talk to you from time to time about all the things that are coming across your bow.
Well, let me leave this with you, Jay. I want to thank you. It's very important that citizens really step forward and take control of the destiny of this state. We can't leave it to government. Our government is a good government. It's a just government, but we've lost control of it to government. Government's become too big, too pervasive, and too powerful, and we citizens have to regain control of our destiny, and that requires us getting involved. I tell kids all the time, Jay, when they come in to visit me, what's the most expensive thing you're going to pay for? And I'm a big house, travel, lots of kids, whatever. And the most expensive thing we pay for in Hawaii, the average citizen, statistically, 40% pays for government. So what it really means, if you're a laborer out there working, that you work from January to sometime in May to just pay your taxes, federal, state, and county. So there's tremendous justification that we regain control not only of our state government, but of our federal government, so we can control our destiny.
It's a critical message, and I hope you keep on
Well, thank you.
giving that message to everyone.
Thank you.
And hopefully one day we'll be able to look at this and realize that it was important to us, and we should have followed it a long time ago. Thank you, Fred.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Aloha to you.